Well, we're joined now by someone we love here on this show, an old friend. It's been too long,
way too long.
Yes, Kelly Carlin, writer, author, speaker, producer, performer. She's the host of the Kelly Carlin Show on Sirius XM and the podcast Waking Up from the American Dream, author of this fantastic book. It's A Carlin Home Companion, Growing Up with George. She's also executive producer of the new HBO doc, George Carlin's American Dream. It's about her father, George. It's directed by Judd Apatow and Michael Bonfiglio, and it features some of my favorite people. And Jon Stewart. So, welcome.
I see you haven't changed at all.
You look great.
Thank you. It looks good. I'm so excited to be here.
Yes, and hopefully we will resume these visits. People leave, they move to New York, and they never come back to Los Angeles. Some of my happiest times in Los Angeles were at your parties, the Polymind community. I'm antisocial, but everyone at your parties, I could talk to anybody.
Yeah, family.
Hey, what was the name of your dog?
The big, tall one?
Yeah.
Ned.
Yeah.
Now,
we all love Ned. Am I allowed to talk about Ned?
Of course you are.
Ned, in his later years, like all of us, began forgetting things, right?
Yes.
What would he do? And this is cruel, but I sometimes I think about it and it warms my heart and makes me giggle at the same time.
Well, he was one of those older, tall dogs that had lost, communication with the backside of his body. So sometimes he would just collapse. And then other times he would just, participate by sharing more of himself than we wanted inside of the house. I'll just put it that way.
But sometimes he would start barking because he forgot that you weren't a stranger.
Yeah, he was a little senile at the end.
Yeah, near the end. Like he would be barking at me and you'd go, "Oh, that's okay. He forgot that you're a guest." He thinks
yes. He was one of the best humans we ever knew.
Okay. A Carlin Home Companion, Growing Up with George. Let's talk about the book, and hopefully we can have time to talk about the documentary, which is kind of based on the book.
Parts of it were. I mean, Judd and Mike really took my story to heart and really understood that I was going to be I'm the only one left. So I was going to be the one to talk about the Carlin family. And in fact, when they interviewed me here, Wayne Fetterman.
Yes.
Wayne was here and he was one of the producers and he had that book, and it was just marked up with 10,000 Post-its and everything. And they'd be interviewing me and they'd, ask me about something and I wasn't quite sure on the year. And I would just be like, "Wayne, what year was that?" And he'd go, 1975, Kelly. I'm like, "Thank you, Wayne. Wayne's the keeper of my life now. He just walks around everywhere with me and has all my memories."
Right. We have to have Wayne back on the show. You found a place for your dad's stuff.
I did. The National Comedy Center up in Jamestown.
I remember you're incredibly generous, and I remember you taking me into a room and showing me the evolution of a bit, the series of cocktail napkins that led to a bit. So it's all safekeeping now.
Yeah, it's been in Jamestown for about 5-6 years now. I donated the archive, about 90% of what I had to them. And so the documentary accessed all of the archives there, and then everything I have here too. So the handwritten notes, the calendars, the minutia that my dad saved because he was a little OCD. Like the bill of sale for the first car he ever bought. Like, he kept everything. And then what was interesting was they had shown me a rough cut, and because I was an executive producer and I obviously know my dad, I needed to give them notes. So I watched this rough cut, and then I was trying to find something, and I went up in my attic to find it, and I was looking for something else, and I turned, and there was this envelope, a big manila envelope in my dad's handwriting that said, George and Brenda's love letters. And I was like, what? My mother's been dead 25 years. I have no idea how I ever missed this envelope. It was outside of the trunk. I was looking at, it was like my dad came and like placed them right there in front of me. And I went back downstairs and I started reading them, and I started taking pictures and sending Judd and Mike pictures of these letters. And Judd tells the story on someone's podcast that you mentioned earlier, and that they'd kind of pretty much locked picture, but then they were like, oh shit, now we've got these amazing love letters we've got to fit in. And I have to say, I'm really happy they did, because it shows my dad's true, most sentimental, gooey love bug heart of his, which I think is really important for people to understand, because I wanted the documentary to really represent 360 degrees of my dad. And it does. And I'm super, 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 super happy about that.
Right. He left them around, so he wanted them to be read.
Clearly, right? This stuff, you think there's going to be eyeballs on it at some point. So, yeah.
Right. You didn't feel maybe this is something that should be.
No, not 14 years after his death. Because part of what needed to be told in this documentary was my mother's story, that without Brenda Carlin, there is a George Carlin, but it's probably a different George Carlin, and it probably didn't happen. It wouldn't have happened the way it happened, because she was there early when he was with Burns and Carlin, with Jack Burns on the road. And I mean, we also show letters of, them starving and having to borrow money from everybody because they have $3, and her just undying belief in his talent, which I think is really, really essential for young artists to have someone who really, really believes in them.
Right.
And my dad had a lot of confidence and a lot of ambition, but he always needed that person here to mirror back to him. Go for it. I'm here with you. Let's do this.
We have a lot of new listeners because I tend to alienate the old ones. So,
see that's why isn't that something to me?
But one of the benefits of having new listeners is I get to use old material. The way I love describing you, whenever I talk about you, I always say, you are the daughter George Carlin should have had. and you always say, but I am the daughter he should have had. I am his daughter.
I am the one.
It never turns out the way it's supposed. You are a Jungian psychologist. You studied Jung. You have a degree. You are absolutely brilliant, loving, and caring, as well adjusted as anybody who grew up in America could be. But
worked my ass off for it.
You are truly the daughter George Carlin should have had.
Ah, thank you, David.
And because it never turns out that way. It never, you meet, when you meet George Carlin's daughter, you're supposed to say, I was expecting her to be, that's kind of, I guess he was on the road. He didn't have time.
Well, David, you met me at the right decade of my life. Let me just put it that way. Because in my 20s, you would have been like, yeah, makes a lot of sense. Perfect sense now.
Well, it's in the book. So I want to talk about the book.
Okay.
Okay. You're pretty open.
Yeah.
Can I bring up something in the book that may be difficult?
It's in the book. Go for it.
It's in the book. I can go for it. Okay.
Yeah.
We're talking about guns this week.
Yes.
20 million Americans have either been shot or threatened by an intimate partner with a gun. Now, you are a princess. You're a comedy princess. Whether I know that makes you feel uncomfortable, but you're the daughter of the greatest stand-up comic who's ever done it. Nobody will ever come close to George Carlin. I watched him the other night, a special, and I'm going, it's more relevant today than it was 20 years ago. There's George Carlin, and then there's stand-up comedy. You're a princess. You also grew up, horses, and there were private jets and
privilege of West Side LA, private schools, BMWs. Yes.
So I would like to think that our princess of comedy has no experience with guns. Is that true?
Once again, we were bringing up my 20s, that famous decade of mine where I made some interesting choices. My first husband, when I met him, he was on probation for a federal weapons charge because he was one of these people who at 9 years old was building television sets, and he helped Jerry Lewis invent the in-camera video, the
video assist.
Yes,
your first husband invented the video assist.
He was one of the people who figured it out. He was 19 years old on the set with Jerry Lewis figuring that out. Genius guy, was bored, went and had a lot of rich friends in Beverly Hills who had guns. And so he would go to hardware stores and make silencers just out of things from the hardware store for them so they could shoot their guns in their backyards.
No way you didn't figure out how to silence Jerry Lewis?
No, unfortunately not. No, he did not. But
I'm reading Mel Brooks's book, and there's a chapter on how he had to spend money on lawyers to get his name taken off a Jerry Lewis movie. Go ahead. I interrupted you. I'm sorry.
Wow. Anyway, when I met
the silencer.
So when I met this gentleman, when I met my first husband, Andrew, he was on probation for a federal weapons charge for making these silencers. The ATF stormed into his apartment. He had a newborn at the time, back when he had this happen, had a newborn child and all this kind of stuff, and was on probation for 4 or 5 years for this. So he loved guns. My first guy and husband. And so for my birthday one year, I was with him from age 18 to 29. We got married when I was 22. He was 11 years older than me. For my birthday one year, he bought me a gun thinking this is what I wanted. Now I went out and I shot. He taught me how to shoot a handgun. He taught my mom how to shoot a handgun, actually. He bought a shotgun for the house for my parents for protection. But he also he bought an AR-15. He had an AR-15. He was one of those guys. I did shoot it a couple of times. It is thrilling. I didn't really get it. I get shooting a gun is thrilling. I do. I get it. But one of the things we did was we were part of this thing called Single Action Shooters Society, where you pretend like you're cowboys and all the guns are single action shooters. And so you would dress up in stuff, and then you'd go do these scenario shootings and stuff. And I did that for a year. It wasn't my thing. It just wasn't my thing. But I've been around guns. I have a beautiful bird shotgun thing in our house here. Still, we don't have handguns. Handguns are very terrifying to me. So guns exist. My dad had a gun. Andrew bought him a gun too. So yeah, but I think people should be definitely. I don't think machine guns. People need machine guns in America. I just don't know what do we do. What do we do with these? What are 400 million guns? What are we supposed to do with all these?
Any incidents? Any negative memories?
Oh yeah. So when my first husband and I did a lot of cocaine, that's how we met and bonded.
That's a good recipe.
It's very bonding. And then yes, guns. And so he was in the depths of, I had quit doing cocaine and gone back to school, UCLA, to get my life together because I knew I needed to leave this man because he was a narcissistic, controlling person who worshipped me. It was great. And he had an automotive shop.
Hang on for 1 second. He was a narcissist. He was controlling. And he worshipped you.
He did. Yeah. Yeah. I had a self-esteem issue. So the worshiping part was what sucked me in, and the cocaine. But he was freaking out on cocaine. He was in the dark edges of that addiction, and I had quit. And I was really looking for ways to get out of the marriage, but pretty terrified because he had guns and he was controlling. And we were at his automotive shop one day.
And he worshipped you.
And he worshipped me, except for this day when we had some sort of an argument. And I don't remember what it was about, of course, or anything like that. But I just remember saying, like, I'm done with this. And I went to turn around and walk away, and he pulled a gun on me. And I peed in my pants. Bodily response to the threat of death. Your body does these things. It's pretty amazing. And so that was the low. That was the part of the low of that thing. And I did get out, and I did get out safely from the marriage. I did sleep with a gun that he gave me under my pillow the first 3 weeks I left him for fear that he would come and find me or harm my parents. He ended up not being that guy, the harming type. But I understand the threat of it and the feeling of that as a woman, to feel that unsafe.
And the trauma of just that.
100%. Yeah.
Of the one of the 20 million Americans who have been threatened by a loved one.
And if you have it is so, because if there's a gun in the house and something like some insanity happens, if there's no gun there, then there's no possibility of that happening. But if there is one, you've been talking about the statistics of this, it's a nightmare. Yeah.
We only have 9 minutes left. Will you come? Could I corral you?
Anytime. Okay. I miss you so much. I miss
you too. I moved to New York, and somebody got custody of all my West Coast friends in the divorce.
Oh, well, that's not true. But I miss our KPFK days when we would make silly songs up with Gary Shapiro.
And your father cost KPFK about $20 million, as I recall.
Well, they chose that. Now, let's be clear about that. He did not cost them anything. They chose to go to the Supreme Court and fight that.
Right. Well, that's for
WPAI. Yes.
We only have 8 minutes. Here's why I don't smoke dope. I'm telling you, when you told me that your ex-husband, who pulled a gun on you, helped Jerry Lewis invent the video assist. I'm telling you, if I were stoned, I'd have to be hospitalized. That little touch that he and Jerry Lewis invented the video assist, which is like one of the most important things in filmmaking. Like my head, just Jerry Lewis. Thinking of my head would explode. You are a Jungian psychologist. You study.
Yes, I consider myself post-Jungian, but let's not get into turf wars.
I just learned how to pronounce Jung. So
Jung. Yeah, that's fine. You're doing great.
Thank you. He wasn't the guy. He wasn't Marcus Welby.
No,
or from Father Knows Best. That's a different Jung. So when you look at the NRA. When you look at the gun conversation, the lunacy in this, how do you filter it as a Jungian? How do you explain this?
Well, I mean, part of it is this exceptionalism, individualism of America, the cowboy, the go west young man, the man out in the prairie, whatever that kind of expansionism, manifest destiny bullshit. So there's that kind of archetypal energy of
some collective subconscious that they all share.
And then there's this but so there's part of it's that rugged individualism part. I get that. The part I don't get is, well, I think there is a type of personality that is, the libertarian part of all of us. We all have a libertarian living inside of us. We all just have different issues that we're willing to fight for that. My dad was a First Amendment freedom of speech libertarian, First Amendment absolutist. But a First Amendment absolutist doesn't do as much damage to the collective as a Second Amendment absolutist.
That's what the Reverend Barry W. Lynn said to Wayne LaPierre.
Yeah, it's like, and the thing is that the picking and choosing of that Second Amendment language, that lovely video that's going around about some ex-military guy who's talking about, well-regulated. How are we ignoring that part of the phrase? And then, of course, militia, which is such an outdated concept. And these people had muskets back then. Right. It's all of these, this originalist, this obsession with the original, the ideal. We all have parts of us that are also obsessed with the ideal, the perfection of the city on the hill, all of this, kind of energy, but we're living in the real world. So it's this interesting cutting off of reality to serve this idealism that doesn't fit in modern life. It's important to have ideals for all of us, but we also have to learn to live with each other and get along. And so and I see it as a form of mass insanity at this point. I don't see how there's any other way to talk about this, and I also see it as pure political cynicism also. Right. People talk about my dad being a cynic, and my dad, the biggest thing he ever taught me about that word was, he said, I'm not a cynic, I'm a disappointed idealist. The cynics are the people who know better and use their power anyway to keep power, right, to keep their wealth. Those are the cynics. So, it's a form of narcissistic power of, the inner authoritarian. I mean, it's, you can't even have a conversation with these people about it. It's just a power grab in the end. And, as we know, that's going to be the downfall of this particular species.
Kellyanne.
Oh my God.
I'm sorry.
Wow.
Her marriage is falling apart.
Well, it's shocking. It's been falling apart on Twitter for 5 years.
I know. I feel guilty. Like,
you should.
I should not wish bad for bad people, right?
That's the charm. That's your charm, David.
Yes. Well, I want you to meet Dr. Harriet Fraad in a second because we're going to be talking about this. Let me just remind everybody that Kelly is the host of the Kelly Carlin Show, which you can hear on Sirius XM, as well as the podcast Waking Up from the American Dream. She is executive producer of the new HBO doc, George Carlin's American Dream. It is about her father, George. It's directed by Michael Bonfiglio and Judd Apatow. And I was going to watch it over the weekend. But first I picked up A Carlin Home Companion, Growing Up with George, and I reread it. it's hard for me to watch like Judd's thing on Gary. Gary Shandling.
Mm-hmm.
It's a masterpiece.
It is,
and it's really like it's like watching, and I have to be in the right frame to see the George. Like I want to make sure that I can watch it, because I don't want to watch it with one eye. I mean, the Shandling thing, is a masterpiece, and I can't imagine how great
I will look forward to hearing what you have to think afterwards, because I'm blown away by what they did. So it's a great documentary.
If it's 1/10 as good as the Shandling thing, it's going to be a masterpiece. And I watched Ricky Gervais's special over the weekend. I know he got into trouble with some stuff. He is so effing funny.
Is he really? I watched one a couple of years ago, and I just was completely unimpressed. But I'll watch this new one and see how
it's offensive, and he pissed me off.
Yeah, I just find sometimes him a little lazy. Like my dad was so good at constructing a good argument, and I just sometimes find some of these people attempting to do that, and they're not my dad, and I just have a huge bias. So it's
like I said, there's George Carlin, and there's stand-up. Nobody, seriously, nobody. It's not even, before you go, what was your happiest moment before the age of 10 being George Carlin's daughter? What was a moment where you felt, I am cradled by the universe, it'll always be this way, I am safe, secure, because I'm George Carlin's daughter?
I think any time getting to sit with my dad and my mom and watch comedy on TV and get to witness them laughing and to learn and figure out why they're laughing at it. And, that has always been my fondest memory, whether it was the Carol Burnett Show or Newhart or, or even Carson, people on Carson and stuff. So, yeah.
He enjoyed other comedians.
He did. Oh, my dad had an easy laugh. Yeah.
Kelly Carlin, come back next week to be continued. So much.
I'll always come visit you. Anytime.
I love you. I miss you.
I miss you too.
Give my best to Mr. McCall, please.
I will. I will.
And
thank you for having me.
Everybody watch the HBO doc and listen to the Kelly Carlin Show on Sirius XM. But most importantly, for me, go buy a Carlin Home Companion, Growing Up with George, written by Kelly Carlin. It's even better the second time around. I want to introduce you to Dr. Harriet Fraad. Dr. Harriet Fraad joins us, and we're very grateful for that. She's a mental health counselor, hypnotherapist. She's a founding member of the feminist movement and the journal Rethinking Marxism. She's the host of the Capitalism Hits Home podcast, and she sees her clients and has helped me see my neuroses through the many prisms of capitalism. Welcome, Dr. Harriet Fraad. I'd like you to meet Kellyanne Carlin, who...
Stop, Kellyanne.
I'm sorry, I got old.
Dr. Fraad, you need to help him with this.
Kellyanne, how's George? Isn't Kellyanne Conway married to George? George Conway? There's a lot going on in my head, not of any use. Dr. Harriet Fraad has a show on WBAI, Pacifica Radio. Yeah, and Kelly's dad cost you guys a couple of $1 million as well, I believe.
70s. He did lots of benefits to make up for it.
He's worth it.
Nice.
No question. Such a gift to us.
Right.
I wish he was still around.
Yes, we need him. We need him now more than ever. However, his stuff is more relevant now than
all the time. That's right. It's more relevant all the time.
More relevant than when he say.
Yeah, because people are paying attention now.
Yeah.
Now, America is waking up to the disaster. Then
Yep.
that's important.
Agreed.
It's a
Thank
good
you.
news.
Yeah. I'll share emails. I think you two should talk.
I would love that. Nice to meet you, Harriet.
Thank you, Kelly.
Bye, guys.
See you next
Kelly,
week.
nice to meet you.
Kelly Hand. Thank you. Say hello to George.